React, server components, Next.js. What is happening? Every day I go on Twitter and I see discussions about server components, Next.js 13. I don't get it. I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand how a React application, which is a client-side thing, can have server components. Do you just deploy it and the server deals with it? I don't get it, you know? I don't know if you're in the same boat. You've been on Twitter, all of these people talking about it. I feel like I can't contribute to the conversation because I don't understand what's happening. So in this video, if you're in the same boat as me, I'm literally going to be going through the Next.js 13 blog post about what's new, reacting my thoughts on top of the blog post. And if you care about somebody who's not a software engineer anymore, adding their thoughts to the Next.js 13 documentation, maybe you're having a coffee, maybe having lunch, and you just want something in the background that's semi-productive, this video is perfect for you. I'm going to be sitting there reading and giving my thoughts on Next.js 13, trying to understand how React is becoming this server-side world where everything is performed on the server by default and served to the client, and where things like in the Next.js world get server-side props and get static props, and the server-side data fetching methods are going in the future. So grab a coffee, grab some lunch. Let's go through the documentation together. All right, as we announced at Next.js Conf, Next.js 13 lays the foundations to be dynamic without limits. Very deep. App, okay, so I guess these are the features. The first one we have here is app directory, which is in beta. Easier, faster, less client-side JavaScript because you're by default writing stuff on the client, so less JavaScript gets shipped to the client, which makes sense. As part of that, there is layouts, React server components, which I'm hoping is a good explanation to what the hell is going on in React right now. Streaming, and that's it for the first point here. So the second point, we have Turbo Pack. I'll zoom in a little bit here. Turbo Pack up to 700 times faster than Webpack, and that's based in Rust, which Lee Robb, the head of developer experience, I believe his title is, VP of developer experience, has been very vocal about in his blog post here, Rust as a future of JavaScript infrastructure, where he talks about Rust is blah, 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 fast, reliable, very good blog post. And he has been very vocal about how JavaScript's tooling is not going to be written in JavaScript. It's going to be written in Rust in the future with, I don't know anything about Rust, to be completely honest with you, but apparently it's better and faster. And as you can see, all of the tools that are being built, such as Turbo Pack to replace Webpack, is now being built in Rust rather than in JavaScript, which is quite interesting. Turbo Pack is, of course, part of Turbo Repo. Well, it sounds like it's part of Turbo Repo, I'm assuming, which is a company that Next.js acquired quite recently, a couple of months ago. I've lost my place in the article here, but it's pretty interesting to see how that's being integrated. Third point we have here is new Next.js images with faster and native browser lazy loading. I kind of think I know what that means. We'll see if that's what I think it is, but Next.js image is quite interesting to me because I think the idea is really good. I don't think the experience of using it is very good at all. From my experience, I don't know if it's been updated since I have used it, but getting the right width and height and style that you want out of this component is a complete nightmare and makes me never want to use it. I'm going to be straight up. I don't like using this component. Hope that it has been improved and hope it's still improving. The idea and the concept of it's excellent. I don't think the execution of implementing it in your applications was done that well, personally. Fonts. This is something that I've never understood either. Automatic self-hosted fonts with zero layout shift. I don't have anything to say about this because I don't understand what's the previous method of doing it is. So I don't have much to comment on that one. Improved Next link simplified API without automatic A tags. With automatic A tags, sorry. Cool. All right, so update today by installing all of the stuff. Next latest, React DOM latest, ESLint latest. All right, excellent. So on to the first point here. One of the most loved features, this is under the app folder or app directory, which is in beta, is Next.js's file system router. This is very, very true. When I first started building in React, which is about 2-3 years ago, the thing, I just stumbled across Next.js in the React documentation, and I was like, okay, this looks cool. I'll try it out. The thing that I fell in love with was how you create a file in the pages folder and it creates a page for you. I was like, damn, that's so cool. And it seems so simple now. Like looking back at it, it's such a simple, elegant feature that, I don't know, that was what made me fall in love with Next.js as a complete noob. Was I didn't have to deal with the alternatives to this, which was React Router at the time, and it was terrible. I didn't understand React Router at all. I thought it was way too complicated. I don't know how much it's changed since that time, but I really fell in love with Next.js from this super simple feature where you just created a page and it created a page for you on your app. It's just so simple. So yeah, that is a very true statement. Drop a file inside a folder and you're able to instantly create routes in your application, no configuration required. Exactly. Today, we're improving the routing and layouts experience in Next.js with the introduction of the app directory. #beta. This is the result of the layouts RFC previously published for community feedback. The new router includes support for, let's take a look at this RFC. The request for comment outlines the biggest update to Next.js since it was introduced. This is a very big change. Nested layouts, design for server components, improved data fetching, React 18. Okay, there's a lot to go through there, so I'm just going to close that off. But essentially, there's big changes that people are very excited about, like layouts, nested layouts, fetching data on the component level rather than the page level is an interesting one. So hopefully we'll learn more about that in this post here. So the new router includes support for layouts, easily share UI between routes while preserving state and avoiding expensive re-renders. Easily share UI between routes. Okay, that's kind of a complicated sentence. Server components making server-side first, the default for the most dynamic applications. Okay, so this is an interesting one that's confusing me. Under the app directory, so you create a page. It's essentially a replacement for your pages directory. And you create a page in the app directory, and it's server-side by default. In Next.js, that kind of makes sense. But this behavior is happening in React applications, which I don't understand. So hopefully that's explored a little bit. But the next point is streaming, is display instant loading states and stream in units of UI as they are rendered. So from what I've seen, you can have a loading page, which is rendered in place of your data being fetched. So while your data is being fetched, this loading state will be rendered on the UI, and you have a separate page, a separate component under the kind of directory that you're building. So let's say you have a folder or a directory within the app directory that's called, I don't know, my posts or something. And while you're fetching those posts in the server component, you render this loading.tsx component. And if there's an error, you can render an error.tsx component. But as soon as that server sort of component fetch is completed, the actual component that you're trying to render is finally placed onto the client. So you don't have to manually handle these loading error states anymore, which is pretty nice. Support for data fetching, async server components, and extended fetch API enables component level fetching, which sounds very awesome. Something that I've wanted for a long time in Next.js is I don't want to just server-side fetch on a page. I want to actually server-side fetch within a component. And you kind of have to do these weird ways of achieving that. But this is going to be much nicer. While you don't need to use the app directory when upgrading to Next.js 13, the app directory can coexist with the existing pages directory for incremental adoption. We have a nice little diagram here of the app directory coexisting with the pages. Within the pages, index.js goes to the home route dashboard. Okay, this is already stuff that we're aware of. So we have like these automatic pages being converted to routes, which is, I guess this is just showing that you can have it coexist with the pages directory. So you can have kind of these server components within the app, and then the default stuff that you're used to within the pages directory here. The next section that we have is layouts. So the app directory makes it easy to lay out complex interfaces that maintain states across navigations, avoiding expensive re-renders and enabling advanced routing patterns. Further, you can nest layouts and co-locate application code with your routes like components, tests, and styles. Okay, that was pretty confusing. Yeah, I don't get it. Anyway, sounds good. The app directory can be implemented. Creating routes inside app requires a single file, page.js. Okay, cool. This file maps to the index route. Okay. You can then define layouts through the file system. Layouts share UI between multiple pages. Cool. On navigation, layouts preserve state, remain interactive, and do not re-render. This is pretty interesting. So I'm starting to understand why the app directory exists. So let's say your app has a homepage and a sort of dashboard where the user has logged in and they're ready to start using the dashboard. So you would have a dashboard folder, and within that you would have a page.js, which would represent the dashboard / route, so the homepage of the dashboard. And then each page that you create within that dashboard directory can have the same layout. So for example, you have a layout where you have a header for the dashboard for the authenticated user, and each page within that layout can have the same structure where you have that same header or footer, for example, and the actual layout doesn't get re-rendered each time, which is what currently happens, I believe, in a Next.js application, where unless you have the default kind of layout, which is the _app.tsx, which is every single page, then this kind of enables you to have these structures where you have different kind of layouts for each kind of directory or section of your application, is my understanding. And that's cool. There's a lot of hype about this part. I don't think I fully grasp it just yet, but this is something that the engineers in our team are very excited about. So sounds good. Learn more about layouts and pages or deploy an example. Okay, maybe we should click on this to see what's happening. All right, routing fundamentals with very fancy new documentation. Let's see. So Next.js 13 introduced a new file system-based router built on top of React server components with support for layouts, nesting, loading states, error handling, blah, blah, blah. Terminology. You will see these terms being used throughout the documentation. Here's a quick reference. I don't think we need to care about that. The app directory. The new router works in a directory named app. The app directory works alongside the pages directory to allow for incremental adoption. Routes in the app directory will take precedence over routes in pages. This means if there are two routes with the same path, one in app. Yep. Okay. In the app directory, folders are used to define routes. A route is a single path of nested folders, following the hierarchy from the root folder down to a final leaf folder. Files are used to create UI that is shown for the route segment. Route segments. Each folder in a route represents a route segment. Each route segment is mapped to a corresponding segment in a URL path. So, for example, we have /dashboard/settings would be achieved by creating a nested folder structure within the app directory where you have a folder called dashboard and a folder called settings. And then I'm assuming every page within this maps to like what you would expect within the pages directory. So if you had settings in, I don't know, like xyz.js, you would have the route mapped to /dashboard/settings/xyz.js or xyz. I think that's how it works anyway. To create a nested route, you can create nested folders inside each other. For example, you can add new dashboard/settings route by nesting two new folders in the app directory. Yep, that's just what we saw. Special files. Next.js provides a set of special files you can use in your routes. These files are, here we go, this is what we care about. Page, a file used to define the unique UI of a route. Pages represent the leaf of the route and are needed for the page to be accessible. Okay, so this is like the main page. Page.tsx or page.js is like the index.js file, essentially. It's like the actual page that you're rendering on that route. So it would be /dashboard/settings, and you would create a page.tsx within that settings folder. That would be the page that gets rendered to the user on the UI if they were to visit that route. That makes sense. Layout.tsx is a file used to define UI that is shared across multiple pages. A layout accepts another layout or a page as its child. You can nest layouts to create nested routes. A file is used to define UI that is shared across multiple pages. A layout accepts another layout or a page as a child. I don't really get that, but okay. An optional file used to create loading UI, so this is what I was talking about earlier. It automatically wraps a page or child layout in a React suspense boundary, whatever that is, showing loading components immediately on the first load when navigating between sibling routes. Okay, I can't be bothered to read the rest of that. Sounds good though. So basically, it's a little reworked version of the pages directory where you can have a page.js, which represents the actual page that you're rendering. And I guess you can have nested layouts. I don't really get the layout part. Layout, a file used to define UI that is shared across multiple pages. Yeah, I don't get that. Don't get that. Anyway, moving on. Server components. The app directory introduces support for new React server components architecture. Server and client components use the server and the client each for what they're best at, allowing you to build fast, highly interactive apps with a single programming model that provides a great developer experience. With server components, we're laying the foundations to build complex interfaces while reducing the amount of JavaScript sent to the client, enabling faster initial page loads. When a route is loaded, the Next.js and React runtime will be loaded, which is cacheable and predictable in size. This runtime does not increase in size as your application grows. All right, whatever. Streaming. The app directory introduces the ability to progressively render and incrementally stream rendered units of the UI to the client. With server components and nested layouts in Next.js, you're able to instantly render the parts of the page that do not specifically require data. Very cool. And show a loading state for the parts of the page that are fetching data. That's very cool. With this approach, the user doesn't have to wait for the entire page to load before they can start interacting with it. That's very, very cool. Very excited about that. When deployed to sell Next.js 13 applications that use the app directory will stream responses by default in both the Node.js and Edge runtimes for improved performance. That's sick. I really like that. React's recent, this is the data fetching section, React's recent support for promises RFC. And this is a fucking nightmare of a document. I don't understand it at all. Introduces a powerful new way to fetch data and handle promises inside components. So this looks like a pretty simple explanation, but essentially, when in Next.js 12, you would have like a get server-side props, and you would fetch data and return that data as props to the component that you're actually rendering. The change is you literally just write a function, that async function. You say await that data, and the component won't render until that data has come back, which is pretty crazy. It's a very nice change. I like it a lot. I don't understand how that happens in React applications without Next.js. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. I don't really get it. The native fetch web API has also been extended in React and Next.js to automatically dedupes fetch requests and provides one flexible way to fetch, cache, and revalidate data at the component level. This means all the benefits of static site generation, server-side rendering, and incremental static regeneration are now available through one API. So there's no more get server-side props within the app folder. You can still do it if you want in the pages folder, but all of it's just being replaced by this one kind of server component structure where you can specify options. I'm hoping they show that somewhere, but you can specify options of how you want this fetch to behave, how you want to cache that data. So it looks like here, this request should be cached manually until manually invalidated. So this is get static props, right? Where you would fetch it, it caches kind of permanently. This page is assuming to be never changing. It's a static page, such as your home page or your about page or something like that. And you can do that by passing the second object parameter here to the fetch function. And if you're not using fetch, I believe you can actually specify at the top of the page how you want this component to behave with just kind of hard-coded exports. But if you are using fetch, you can set the cache property in the second argument here in this object to be force cache, and that's the behavior of get static props that will never be refetched, that will never run again. All of that data will be cached by default. If you want to use sort of get static props with ISR, incremental static regeneration, so the page is static, but if how does this behave? If the request should be cached with a lifetime of 10 seconds. Yeah, so if a user comes back 10 seconds after it was last fetched or something like that, I'm actually not 100% sure, then the data will be refetched. Otherwise, it just uses the cache. I explained that really badly. But essentially, this is static, but updatingly static. So every kind of 10 seconds, every time the user visits after 10 seconds has passed, then the page will be updated. And then that next updated version will be the static content that gets served. So this is suitable for like a blog post maybe, where you want to render changes in the blog post or comments on that blog post, but you still want that data to be static. And the third kind of alternative here is the get server-side props. This would be fetched on every single time you try and reach the page, which is the behavior of get server-side props in the past, where you just specify no store as the cache option in the second argument object for that fetch request. Excellent. So this is much cleaner. I like this a lot compared to get server-side props, get static props. They didn't talk about get static paths here, which is interesting. But hopefully they discover that. They talk about that a little bit. All right. In the app directory, you can fetch data inside layouts, pages, and components. I like it a lot, including support for streaming responses from the server. Again, I don't know what that is, but sounds good. We're enabling ergonomic ways to handle loading and error states and stream in UI as it's rendered. In a future release, we'll be improving and simplifying data mutations as well. Yep, looks good. We're excited to work with the open source community, package maintainers, and other companies contributing to the React ecosystem to build this new era of React and Next.js. The ability to co-locate data fetching inside components and ship less JavaScript to the client were two important pieces of community feedback we are excited to include with the app directory. Introducing TurboPack. My goodness, I'm not even halfway through this blog post. All right, let's go. TurboPack. Next.js 13 includes TurboPack, the new Rust-based successor to Webpack. Webpack has been downloaded over 3 billion times, and not one of those people knows how it works. That's not really what it says. If you are watching, it says, while it's been an integral part of building the web, we've hit the limits of maximum performance possible with JavaScript-based tooling. Next.js 12, we began our transition to native Rust-powered tooling. We started by migrating away from Babel, which I also don't understand how it works, which resulted in 17 faster transpilation, which I don't know what it is. Then we replaced Tersa, which I don't know what it is, resulted in 6 times faster minification, which I don't know what it is. It's time to go all in on native for bundling. Using TurboPack Alpha with Next.js 13 results in 700 times faster updates than Webpack, 10 times faster updates than Vite, 4 times faster cold starts than Webpack. I don't know what any of this means personally, but sounds good. only bundles the minimum assets required in development, so startup time is extremely fast. On an application with 3,000 modules, TurboPack takes 1.8 seconds to boot up, Vite takes 11.4 seconds, and Webpack takes 16 seconds. Sure, that's, yep. There's been a little bit of controversy about this, like 10 times faster than Vite, but we'll see. TurboPack has out-of-the-box support for server components, TypeScript, JSX, CSS, and more. During the alpha, many features are not yet supported. We'd love to hear feedback on using TurboPack to speed up your local iterations. TurboPack in Next.js currently only supports Next.dev, view this, yeah, whatever. Here we go, next image. Next.js 13 introduces powerful new image component, allowing you to easily display images without layout shift and optimize files on demand for increased performance. And during the Next.js community survey, 70% of respondents told us they use Next image component in production, and in turn saw improved core web vitals. Really? That's surprising. With Next.js 13, we're improving it even further. Ships less client-side JavaScript, easier to style and configure. That's what I was hoping for. More accessible, requiring alt tags by default, aligns with the web platform. Faster because native lazy loading doesn't require hydration. What a sentence. I'm hoping what that means is the placeholder. You used to have to use some external tools to have a placeholder for the image. Like if you wanted to load a low quality version of that image, or you wanted to just have a placeholder for blurring that image as it loaded, you had to use some external tool and configure that in Next.config, which I always thought was just way too complicated. And I'm hoping what this kind of placeholder prop on the image component means is maybe you can actually do this already, because it doesn't even say here in the comments that this is a new thing. Maybe this means you can just add this placeholder blur prop, and the height and width that you specified of the image will just be like a blurry loading state of that image. I'm hoping that's what it means. We'll see. The old image component was renamed to Next Legacy Image. We provided a code mod that will automatically update your... Okay, whatever, that's not important. Next font, Next.js 13 introduces a brand new font system. Automatically optimizes your fonts, including custom fonts, removes external network requests for improved privacy and performance, built-in automatically self-hosting for any font file, zero layout shift for automatically using the CSS size adjust property. Yep, this new font system allows you to conveniently use all Google fonts with performance and privacy in mind. CSS and font files are now downloaded at build time, very nice, and self-hosted with the rest of your static assets. Awesome. That's really cool. That's really cool. Custom fonts are also supported, including support for automatic self-hosting. Wow, that's really cool. So you can provide a font file, and I guess it gets automatically self-hosted and you don't have to request it. I'm assuming that gets downloaded at build time as it suggests up here. You can customize every part of the font loading experience while still ensuring great performance and no layout shift, including the font display, preloading, fallbacks, and more. All right, almost done. Next link no longer requires manually adding a as a child. I didn't even know it did that. Did it do that? Oh, if you wanted to like style it, it did. I remember now. This was added as an experimental option in 12.2 and now is the default. Next.js 13 link always renders an A and allows you to forward props to the underlying tag. What? I guess you can... Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping this means you can just pass styles to the link. Didn't really showcase the difference here. Anyway, upgrading next link to Next.js 13. Don't care. OG image generation. This is something that isn't really related to Next.js, but that's okay. Middleware API. We introduced middleware in Next.js 12 to enable full flexibility with Next.js Router. We've heard your feedback on the initial API design. It was a little confusing. I used this once. I didn't really understand what was going on when I was using it, but looks like it's improving. Cool. breaking changes, blah, 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 blah. Community, we're finally finished. 6 years ago, we released Next.js to the public. We set out to build a zero configuration React framework that simplifies your developer experience. Looking back, it's incredible to see how the community has grown and what we've been able to ship together. Let's keep going. Next.js is the result of a lot of people. Very good job. Okay, so my thoughts is, looks good. Still confused a little bit about the layout stuff. I don't think that was explained that well. Maybe I'm just dumb, but I don't understand the nested layout stuff just yet. Other than that, I think I got a pretty good understanding. I still don't understand how React server components are server components without Next.js. So maybe the next thing we could read is React server components from the React documentation. So yeah, the kind of thing that I don't understand is you have Next.js, which has these kind of two elements, right? Where you have a server that's deployed somewhere. This is like server, and that provides data. This is a new Excalibur draw. What happened? Excuse me. This provides data to the client, and your server gets deployed to like Vercel or something like that. In my head, React applications such as Create React App don't have this server element. This is just a client. So this is like Next.js and React, Create React App. I don't understand how React is becoming this thing on the left here without, you know, all of those functions. Like, I guess it is kind of the same now with the React server components. It's pretty much going to be the same across Next.js and React. With this kind of new structure here, we have just fetch the data, and that's server side by default. But yeah, maybe my knowledge of how you deploy an application to a server is not quite up to par to understand how this is possible. So let's just have a quick read of a React server components. But these allow developers to build applications that span the server and the client, combining the rich interactivity of client-side apps with the improved performance of traditional server rendering. You can start using the app directory, which uses server components by default. I just want to know about React here. So server and client components. Server components, all. Okay, here we go. Here's the React docs. Here we go. Okay. 2020 has been a long year. Wow, this was a very long time ago. This was about 2 years ago. We're introducing React server components. Don't really want to watch the demo. React server components are still in research and development. I don't know if that's true. That was 2 years ago. Read the RFC with FAQ at the end. View the formatted RFC. My goodness, this is hard to find. Is this a joke? Like, where's the React docs, man? Anyway, React server components with Next.js. What are React server components? React server components improve the user experience of the application by pairing the best parts of server rendering with client interactivity. With traditional React applications that are client-side only, developers often had to make trade-offs between SEO and performance. Server components enable developers to better leverage their server infrastructure and achieve great performance by default. For example, large dependencies that previously would impact the JavaScript bundle. Yep, doesn't tell me what it is. React server components versus server-side rendering. I literally didn't tell you what it is, but anyway, what did you think? The more I think about it, the more crazy it is that the way by default you're going to be creating web applications in the very near future is going to be completely different from what you're kind of used to in the current way that you're implementing and building out web applications. The client first kind of architecture is completely shifting, and server side will be the default way of loading information, and there'll be much more emphasis on performing operations on the servers, which I guess is kind of more controllable, and serving that to the client. Very interesting. I think it's good. I like doing server-side stuff with Next.js already, so it's not that impactful to me, the changes. There's a lot to read and go through, and there's a lot of changes in Next.js 13 that are kind of intimidating at first, but the more you read into it, it's kind of just shifting around the default from client to server in one line. That's how I would describe it. You're not doing stuff on the client by default, you're doing stuff on the server by default, and you have to specifically say if you want to do stuff on the client, which is very interesting. It's probably going to make a lot of money for Vassell, which I guess is partially why we did it. Well, not we, I'm not part of the team, but why they did it. Maybe not. Maybe server operations are better since you can control it on the server, and people's slow-ass internet doesn't make your app look like complete dirt. Anyway, a lot to think about. Hopefully this was somewhat helpful, me giving my thoughts and context behind the documentation, and if you don't want to read it yourself, I've gone through and read it for you along with you. Awesome. All right. So let me know if you enjoyed this style of video. It's a bit of different kind of video from what I'm doing on my channel. I'm experimenting a little bit, being more kind of natural than the previous videos that I put out. But let me know what you think. If you want to see more like this, I'm happy to do so. Happy to learn alongside with you, even though I don't have, the full software engineering senior level background to kind of provide my own newbie thoughts and my personal experiences. So if you found it interesting, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.